Good evening. Welcome to Face the Nation. My name is Edgar Matthew Karohanga. This evening, I have a lady called Dr. Sarah Bireete. She is a lawyer, a human rights defender, but also the executive director for the Center for Constitutional Governance. You're most welcome.
Thank you for hosting me, and good evening, viewers and listeners.
Let's start on the issue that is happening in the General Court Martial right about now. This week, we saw one of the lawyers for Dr. Besigye being incarcerated and imprisoned in the General Court Martial for contempt of court. Firstly, what do you think about this gentleman's arrest, a fellow lawyer like yourself?
Well, I think the whole environment for practice of advocates under the court martial, but also the reason that takes them there, the trial of civilians in court martial, needs to be reviewed. Under the doctrine of separation of powers, the executive should concentrate on service delivery. The army as a pillar of state falls under the executive, and their job is protection of territorial integrity of Uganda and sovereign rights of Ugandans through national security. The role to administer justice under Article 126 of the Constitution belongs to the judiciary. The legislature does work of lawmaking, budget appropriation, and oversight. So once we have a fusion of the executive wanting to administer justice through the army, then we have a crisis that we have been driven into through the dilemma in the court martial.
One would say that the court martial is sanctioned by the constitution of this country, so it is allowed to actually do its work.
Ideally, military courts are meant for discipline of officers of the army, the same way we have police tribunals. Have we ever found a problem with police tribunal in this country? But when the police officers are out of line, they are dealt with under their disciplinary courts. So this should be the same way that we look at military courts as a way of instilling discipline within the military soldiers. That's why military courts sit in the field. You make a mistake in the operation, they sit one day, and we don't have a problem with that. Deal with the soldiers. So, but when it comes to dealing with citizens, we have a problem with that. We have a problem with the UPDF trying to make itself into an appendix of the judiciary, because that violates the principle of the doctrine of separation of powers. There was a mistake that was made in the UPDF Act to say that when civilians are caught in conditions that look like those of the army, then you try them in the army, which was a big mistake by the parliament then. The court in Banjul, the African Court for Human and People's Rights in Banjul ruled in 2014 that Uganda should amend the UPDF Act and remove all clauses that concern citizens. Uganda government has failed to do that. Our own constitutional court has ruled twice that it is unconstitutional to try civilians in military courts.
So why are we...
The Supreme Court has become a thick neck towards this problem instead of being a solution.
Okay, before we look at it as you're playing the devil's advocate here for the General Court Martial, let's look at the case itself of Counsel Aaron Kiza, the contempt. Don't you look at the character, the way he was speaking, and the disrespect he has for judicial officers in the General Court Martial? Don't you think that it's a valid base to sentence him to 9 months in prison?
Let me tell you, we don't know the circumstances through which advocates were facing in this court. These are advocates that are trained to work in civil courts, where laws are respected, where everybody respects themselves, and where everybody keeps in line, in their line. But they find themselves in a strange territory because the court is dragging civilians into their arena. So you can't tell what has happened unless you are fully aware of the facts.
Okay.
I cannot say that Council Aaron Chiza was out of line.
Okay.
I don't know what happened. We have seen several times the military court manhandling civilians, manhandling advocates in these courts. But also, if I may go, because I am not fully aware of what transpired, yes, but if I may go to the charge, you know, the contempt of court is a charge that is a preserve of judicial courts. The military court, which is a tribunal, trying to invoke this case as if they have also powers to handle matters of contempt, is in question. It is something that should be understood. Because if you are a military tribunal, are you a court that can be contempted?
That's the first thing that we want to dispute, because according to the judicial officers in that particular case, they were saying that what you're saying is actually calling them a tribunal is disrespect.
Why is it a disrespect?
They're actually a court. And he actually emphasizes that, saying that as long as you're in such a court, please refer to it as a court, not as a tribunal.
Well, those are matters that now are awaiting determination of the Supreme Court case. Okay. The framers of the UPDF Act in 1995 made a mistake. And fair play of the executive trying to play a double role of the judiciary, which conflicts the doctrine, as earlier explained. Yes, this mistake should be rectified by Parliament. The UPDF courts, whether they want to call themselves courts or whether they are tribunals, should only deal with matters of discipline. Even as a serving soldier, if they commit crimes that are beyond operational mistakes, omissions and commissions, these crimes should be handled in civilian courts because they are, first of all, citizens of this country. If, for example, a soldier, these who are engaged in robbery, they are always in civilian courts. Why aren't they in military tribunals?
Then let's move on to Dr. Besigye. Why is Dr. Besigye there when we know very well that he's a retired soldier? And according to the circumstances, he was picked from Kenya. One would say that even the jurisdiction does not count, according to you such lawyers. Why is Dr. Besigye in such a court today?
So Besigye, Dr. Besigye, first of all, was abducted from Kenya without following due process. The only circumstances that a citizen of Uganda can be arrested out of Uganda is when you are wanted to answer to charges and there is an arrest warrant. Yes. And that involves Interpol to arrest you wherever you are. Yes. And bring you back. Once this is done, then the extradition process is followed. In that extradition process, the country where you have been arrested through court confirms that your rights will be respected in that country. If there is any evidence to prove otherwise, you're not handed over. We can follow the extradition trial of Jamil Mukulu that took 6 months in Tanzania. Yes. Jamil was a wanted terrorist. But they couldn't just pick him and bundle him the way Besigye was picked here. So it is alleged that Besigye was engaged in acts aimed at undermining national security. What does this mean? The duty to maintain the security of the country belongs to the army. So this makes the army the complainant and witness in Besigye's case. His trial in the military court makes the army the investigator, the prosecutor, the judge, and the jury in the same case where they are a main complainant and interested party. So the army, before you don't, even if you were a child, the interest of the army is to convict Besigye. Because the army is an interested party in convicting Besigye. So Besigye cannot get a fair trial as guaranteed under Article 28 of the Constitution and also protected under Article 44. He cannot get it in this court. So what is
going on there in that court right now?
The military court, unfortunately, is being used as a tool for oppression and political persecution. If indeed the army is genuine, that they have a case against Besigye, we have a special court for crimes war crimes because they alleged Besigye was planning a war. Yes. Let him be tried in the war crime division of High Court. What are they hiding? In that military court martial, where a chairman is a layman, and the anger to arrest Aaron could have arose from the way Aaron was saying illegal concepts, basic illegal concepts, that the people could not understand in the previous appearances. And maybe they saw it as a challenge. And as military, all they know is fighting back on challenges. Because if somebody, you know, the concept of court challenge does not have a punishment, a written punishment. It's left at the discretion of courts. We have so far had 2 crazy decisions or punishments for contempt of court. The first one was for Marema Bireete by Justice Sekana, and I know the Law Society is investigating Justice Sekana for judicial misconduct. But now the second crazy one is from a military tribunal of 9 months. Usually contempt of court, it's either a fine or suspension from 1 or 2 appearances. It has never even made the news.
9 months is too long.
Too harsh, too long.
Then
beyond a punishment for mere disciplinary measure.
These things have been happening in the General Court Martial. Remember the case of the NUP members that were charged there, the case of the FDC members who were abducted from Kenya and still charged there. What should Ugandans do? Because whereas you say it's not supposed to charge civilians, they are being charged there. So what next for a Ugandan who's out there watching you?
You see, the problem is that we have reached at a level where our democracy is at its lowest. Because of life presidency. The life presidency now, the presidency is the largest institution in Uganda. So the president as a single person sometimes speaks things outside the constitution, sometimes undermines all institutions of governance. So he's larger than the constitution, he's larger than Uganda. You can look at his recent order on bond.
Yes.
Whereas Article 23 of the Constitution stipulates that if you cannot produce somebody in court within 48 hours, yes, you give them bond. He takes to the TV address and directs otherwise, meaning that power is in his head and he thinks he can amend the Constitution on a TV address.
Yeah, it was the same thing as bail when he was...
Yes, so we have this problem of a presidency who is larger than the country, larger than the Constitution, and undermines the Constitution. That's why we see that he's now using the military court, because the military works on orders. It's a chain of orders. And the principle is that order no moja. You don't question an order. So do we know the order that he has given to the military court? What if he has given them an order to say, charge and convict Besigye in 3 days? It's an order. Do you think the military will do otherwise? No.
He has always boasted that that's why he even likes the military, because at least they get things
Yes,
done.
he wrote a letter that he prefers the military, martial law.
Exactly.
And we see what is happening in South Korea, where a president with the same mindset, who preferred martial law, was removed, I think, within 48 hours from power by parliament. But unfortunately, in our case, this life presidency started by killing the institutions of governance. Like this parliament has no capacity to even have a conversation that we are having. The members of our parliament can raise it, and citizens need to watch it when it opens on Thursday. We have critical issues that they should address, which are matters of national importance, which are matters under their mandate, like an illegal order on bond, the conduct of CDF on social media, what's happening in military court. Some MPs might raise that issue, but the presiding speakers will shut that debate down. They are not fit for that office.
Wow, everything seems
they
to
cannot protect their constitution because of the life presidency. And this is what happens in any other country where you have a president for life, a president that cannot retire, a president that does not respect checks and balances, a president that does not respect the wishes of the people. This is what happens.
You're still watching Face the Nation. My name is Edgar Matthew Karohanga. I'm still with Dr. Sarah Bireete. She is a human rights defender, a lawyer, but also the executive director for the Center for Constitutional Governance. We're entering a political year. In fact, we are in a political year, 2025. And according to the backdrop of 2024, entering 2025, how do you see this year playing out?
Well, it has started badly. It has started badly for us. How did we enter the year? You have the head of the army, the CDF, threatening to behead opposition. Indeed, if a court martial was to do its work, they would by now have sentenced the CDF according to his crimes to undermine the constitution, undermine the UPDF, and undermine his office or abuse his own office. They should have court-martialed the CDF, but can they?
I don't know.
That's why the military courts were set up, to check the conduct of such characters, like the CDF on social media. Can the court-martial try the CDF? No. And that's the dilemma we are in. Can Parliament debate the conduct of the CDF? No. That's the dilemma we are in. There are 2 petitions in court regarding the conduct of the CDF, even before he became a CDF. Can the Chief Justice schedule these court cases to be heard and determined? No. Everybody is hiding their hand in the sand, and if they continue doing so, this country will descend into chaos.
Muhoozi seems to be continuing. He's not relenting in any way. So how
On
does
his hooliganism on social media.
you call it that?
Yeah, because it's out of context. Anything out of context is hooliganism.
So if a CDF, who has power? Because see, Muhoozi has power. If that is his way of
Derived
thinking-
from the Constitution.
Exactly, but he has it. So if he thinks in such a way, and Ugandans, okay, let's look at the opposition. What's next for them?
A head of a family, let me simplify it for the viewers. Okay. A head of a family has power over his family and can call his family to order and even manage public relations regarding his family. That's why he's the head of the family. But if a head of a family defecates on a plate where people eat from, will he command respect?
No.
It's what is happening in the army. The institution of the army is going to the dogs because of that conduct. Yeah.
Can we see
It
change?
has lost its national character, defined in the Constitution. Non-partisan, disciplined, professional, respecting civilian authority. Does that chap have it? No,
According to what he says, he doesn't.
he doesn't. What he portrays, he doesn't have it.
And some have said we shouldn't take those tweets serious. I think
Then why is he in that office? If we have an occupant of an office, let me tell
But
you,
he's joking. These are just jokes and-
of the army are very respected people, are very powerful people in the countries and beyond. So if we have a character where people are coming out of their office to say, this is an unserious character, then why is he in that office? Let him leave. Or be court-martialed.
Okay, maybe lastly on that issue, this gentleman, I know you have talked about this, but even the disrespect he has for his fellow comrades, you heard him the way he described one former CDF.
Well, for
Lieutenant
me,
Chen.
as an analyst of political issues,
Yes, please.
my conclusion is that he's not fit to hold that office. And my call to the appointing authority, who also doubles as his father, is remove this character. He's not fit to be CDF.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go to the judiciary. The Chief Justice Owiny-Dollo. With all these things that you're saying, all these injustices, we have a Chief Justice who all Ugandans should look at as the source for really refuge and justice. He seems to be quiet. What do you think about Chief Justice Alphonse Owiny-Dollo?
Well, if you compare with even the Chief Justices before independence, if you read their acts in the country, if you compare with the post-independent Uganda, the Chief Justices that we have had, I think Justice Owiny-Doro will go down in history as the most dishonest Chief Justice that has occupied that office he's occupying. If you are a Chief Justice, an embodiment of justice in the country, you are seated on an appeal regarding trial of civilians in military courts for 4 years. 4 years. There is an outcry on every corner of Uganda about trial of civilians in military courts. And you remain seated, you remain pretending that everything is normal. My call to him, Justice Owiny-Doro, His Lordship, please resign. If you cannot solve the controversy of the day, and you are seated pretending that everything is normal, you are useless to Ugandans. Resign. There is a function that judiciary should do. Our constitution is very clear from Article 126 to Article 128. There is a role to play. If you cannot play this role, be honest enough and vacate. Somebody else can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. You're still watching Face the Nation. I'm with Dr. Sarah Bireete. Doctor, let's just metamorphose into the politics of the day, the opposition itself. Whereas you have said all these things about the government of Museveni that we are in and the character that they have, the unconstitutionalism that we are experiencing, we have an alternative government that Ugandans are looking out to say these are the people. In case anything happened, we can trust these people with power to make Uganda a better place. How viable is the opposition today, especially the case of NUP, as we enter 2026, the political year? What do you think?
Well, starting from the Constitution was amended to say anybody from 18 years and above can rule Uganda.
Yes.
The actors in the opposition are above 18 years. Those that have studied with a minimum of A level, they are qualified to rule Uganda. I want also to demystify the thinking that ruling Uganda is some form of rocket science, and we have one person with a vision, so we have one-eyed man amongst the blind, and if he's not there, the country can collapse. It's a lie. It's a lie. Nobody has a life cycle longer than a nation. Uganda was there before them, and Uganda will be there after them, whether they like it or not. So we need a political transition, an orderly and peaceful transition of power from President Museveni. This was his first promise in 1986.
Yes.
A promise that he cannot deliver 40 years down the road. There are many good things President Museveni has done.
Yes.
But like life is, even a beautiful dancer leaves the stage. President Museveni needs to retire peacefully, but also he has a duty to fulfill his first promise as he took oath of office in 1986. Orderly and peaceful transfer of power. If he can do this, then the question of who is eligible or who is viable will end. He is seated on the talent of Ugandans. He's using intimidation. He's using money. He's using nepotism to keep power.
And some people have a narrative that that opposition is his own making.
It is wrong. It is false. It is false. Let me look at this notion that NUP was created by NRM. In the yesteryears, during the campaign of 2020, everybody was saying NUP is sponsored by homosexuals. True or false?
True.
Before NUP came to be, Bobi Wine survived assassination in Arua. True or false?
That could be true.
As he was running for presidency, people were murdered all over the place.
Yes.
He was shot at I don't know how many times. So if it was their own creation, why did all these things happen? Why? Two, if Museveni needed opposition against him, there are people in that campaign that had worked with him. Why didn't he use them? And if he is the one who created the NUP, why is he fighting them, imprisoning children, and doing all sorts of funny things to keep power? His acceptance speech was a very angry speech against Buganda, against Catholics. People take advantage because Ugandans seem to have a short memory. If this is your own creation, how do you get to that extent? How?
Okay.
The NRM regime degenerated into abductions of young children born yesterday for supporting Bobi Wine. So what was the panic about? As they announced the results, Bobi Wine was under house arrest. I have it on good sources that President Museveni called the people, including Commonwealth Secretariat, to help him stabilize the country against Bobi Wine when he was under house arrest. So what was that about if it was his own creation?
Okay, so is NUP serious about taking power, really?
The job of any political party or any political actor is to take power. It is not a charity organization.
Some people see it as that. They are saying that.
No, that's their ignorance. Let's not ride on ignorance.
Okay. Because why they say that is that Mr. Museveni in this tenure, it seemed as if it's the easiest tenure that he has had.
A tenure that drove him to degenerate into a terrorist organization. A tenure that drove him.
Every election cycle that we expect violence in this
No, the extent was much. I have observed 3 cycles of elections. The extent of violence was much. The lunacy that even drove them to arrest election observers. Have we ever seen it? So if it was their own creation, why were they out of control?
Okay, what is your message to the people who are getting ready for power, for election, 2026 election?
We have voter update exercise.
Yes.
Starting 20th.
Exactly.
We have 10.8 million voters that are youth, most of them first-time voters. Please make sure you are on the register. My call to Ugandans is you should not be intimidated. This is the time we want a demonstration of highest active citizenry from the people.
So you agree that elections can change government in this country?
I have seen dictators being defeated by people. Even before we go into elections, the 50-year dictator in Syria went running when the people decided so, after 50 years.
But is it an election? That wasn't an
No,
election.
I'm giving an example that people's determination can end dictatorship. 50-year rule in Botswana was defeated on the ballot. True or false?
And Botswana is a unique country.
Peacefully. No, there is nothing unique about an election. Let me tell you, there is no dictator. If a paper cannot take him out to let him stay in his bed, everybody knows him, everybody knows what he's capable of. One, if he's popular, or if a paper cannot take him out, why is he engaged in other campaigns? He spent a whole year before Christmas running all over the country under the guise of supervising PDM. You think he was supervising 100 million PDM? He's in other campaigns. If a paper cannot take him out of power, let him stay in his bed sleeping and we see.
So you encourage Ugandans to galvanize
Participate. It is an opportunity to change power. Participate at every level. Make sure you are a voter. Vote and protect your vote.
Okay. Doctor, let's come to you as an organization, the Center for Constitutional Governance. As we prepare for the elections, I've told you already that human rights abuses are always also on the rampant. As the Center for Constitutional Governance, how ready are you for this particular year and generally those cases, if they are to come up?
Well, we usually engage in work on elections as the legal hub for election observers, but also civic education or voter education, encouraging young people to turn up to vote. A call that I've done, you cannot turn up unless you're registered. So let's use this window to register, verify our details, make sure we are eligible to vote, but also show up and vote, and then protect the vote. So citizens have 3 duties in election, and we shall be engaged in encouraging people to play their role.
Okay.
We also encourage young people to vie for office. If you look at the recent results released by UBOS on the census, 50% of our population are children.
Yes.
The biggest group after that is the youth, 10 million. 0.8 youth, almost 11 million. There is no single candidate who can get 11 million votes. So the youth are going to determine the person that will remain in power beyond 2026. Can they take opportunity of this window and create a government of their choice through the ballot?
Okay.
There is no dictator, by the way, who can be overwhelmingly defeated and manage to win, to rig the vote. There is no one. If you want change, overwhelmingly turn up and defeat NRM. Let me tell you, nobody can rig an election where they have been overwhelmingly defeated.
Sounds too good to be true, really. The
Can we exercise it? I am telling you that it happens.
Okay. But there's also another issue of NGOs such as yourself. People are saying that these days you're no longer doing the work you used to do, but it's now an avenue for getting wealth for yourself or building resources for yourselves. What do you think about that narrative?
I think that narrative is self-defeating in the first place. Why are NGOs not doing the work they used to do? Because the funding has been chased out of Uganda because of context. We saw the first closure through the Democratic Governance Facility, DGF,
Yes.
that was funding 80% of civil society work, closed because of the context in the country. We saw the closure of UN Human Rights Office. What message does that send to outside donors? Uganda is not a place to be. Then we followed that with the enactment of AHA. That also saw another shift of donors. So NGOs are not doing the work they used to do because they don't have resources. So to say that they are not doing the work because they are making money is a stupid statement. Which money are they making when all donors have left Uganda?
So you mean Uganda doesn't have an enabling environment for foreign donors and funders?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I've explained 3 instances.
Yes.
That's the reason there is no viability in civil society, and it's all a design of the regime.
And I thought the regime gets money from such NGOs, one would say.
Of course, when NGOs have funding, you have employment, you have taxes, you have activities going on in hotels and everywhere. You have money in the economy.
So try to make sense for me as to why we could just despise.
Yeah, but the regime did not want noise of NGOs. So they closed the funding sources.
Okay.
Yeah.
And maybe lastly, on these issues of abductions, arrests, and tortures, they're already starting, but we're also entering a political year. What's your message on the tortures?
They never went away. I think what the regime did was to reduce on the scale of abductions. Because if you follow NUP handles, every week they would have a person missing, a person. So they've never gone away. The regime is using abductions as a control measure against the youth because they cannot convince them intellectually to support them. It's going to escalate in the elections like we had in 2021, but they've never gone away. They are unconstitutional, they are archaic, and that's what makes the regime look like a junta, an outlaw.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sarah Bireete. Give us your parting shot as we conclude this interview today.
My parting shots will go to the citizens. I know times are hard. Every sector is experiencing hard times. But Uganda belongs to you. We have been through these phases before. Not us physically, but as a country. When you go to the preamble of the Constitution, we have been through hard times before. These hard times are back, but in a different form. It's our duty to confront these hard times and make a country that we wish to live in.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Sarah Bireete. And of course, our viewers, thank you so much for watching us from the time we started up to right about now. My name is Edgar Matthew Karuhanga. Please do follow us on our social media platforms at The Alternative Uganda, at Digital TV. Remember, we're streaming on either platform, that is on YouTube, but also on Facebook, so you can get a better platform for yourself. My name is Edgar Matthew Karuhanga from the entire team. We shall see you again next week, same time, same station. Good evening.